I still remember the day Professor Hamid leaned back in his swivel chair, arms folded, and looked at me like I was a punchline he found mildly amusing. It was a damp Tuesday afternoon in early March, and I'd just finished presenting the final defense of my Bachelor of Environmental Science thesis, a deep dive into microplastic filtration in urban waterways. I'd spent 2 years on that research, sampling riverbanks at dawn, calibrating turbidity meters until my eyes blurred, coding statistical models late into the night. When I'd clicked submit, I thought I'd be met with congratulations. Instead, I got a smirk and 3 words that would echo in my mind for months. Your degree is useless. I blinked at him, stunned. The room was quiet. My 2 supervisors, Dr. Larson and Dr. Vega, exchanged uneasy glances. My friends in the front row held their breath. Outside, a spring breeze rustled the magnolia trees. I felt the edges of the world tilt. Useless, I managed, voice trembling. How can you say that? He tapped a fountain pen against his notepad. In the private sector, companies want impact, cash flow, scalable solutions. They don't pay you to survey microplastics in a creek. They'll hire consultants who can run models faster and cheaper than you can. Your skills are academic. They won't translate to a paycheck. Heat rose up my neck. I'd heard skepticism about environmental degrees, but to hear it from my own professor felt like betrayal. But microplastics are a global crisis, I began. He waved a hand. Pass your courses, collect your diploma, then join the gig economy. You're only marketable if you pivot to data science or digital marketing. Face facts, your degree won't pay your bills. My defense had turned into an ambush. The Viva committee rattled off dry questions about methodology. I answered in bursts of adrenaline, but every word felt heavy. When it ended, I left the room on autopilot, ignoring the tentative congratulations from Dr. Vega. Outside, the campus courtyard stretched green and quiet. I sank onto a bench, chest tight. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend, Mia. You rocked it. Let's celebrate tonight. I typed back a yes, even though I didn't feel celebratory. That evening, over margaritas at our favorite Mexican spot, Mia listened as I unspooled the story. I punctuated each detail with a shake of the head, imagining the pen-tapping professor. She squeezed my hand. He's an asshole. You're brilliant. Don't let him gaslight you. I forced a smile. I know, but what if he's right? I don't exactly have the most employable skill set. Most environmental science grads end up at nonprofits or doing tech support for GIS software. Mia rolled her eyes. So pivot. Learning Python is not an apocalypse. Or get a job in sustainability consulting. Banks are obsessed with ESG these days. I drained my margarita. Maybe. I poured my heart into that thesis. I wanted it to matter. She nodded, and it will. You just need to find the right audience. A month later, I graduated with honors, wearing the same expression I'd used in my thesis defense, polite terror. My family applauded when I walked across the stage. My parents beamed like I'd cured cancer. Later, at a backyard barbecue, my dad clinked his beer against mine and told me how proud he was. I laughed, but inside I felt hollow, haunted by Professor Hamid's verdict. I floundered through casual job applications, tweaking cover letters to emphasize transferable skills, data analysis, field research, report writing. I landed a few interviews, an entry-level role at a waste management firm, a research assistant position at a local think tank, but in each debrief, feedback was the same. We're seeking candidates with more direct technical experience, or we need proficiency in advanced modeling software. I'd studied R and QGIS, but apparently not well enough. By June, my savings were dwindling. I took a part-time gig at a cafe, pouring lattes, bagging croissants, just to keep the rent paid. At night, I scrolled job boards, sending resumes into the void. My thesis sat on my laptop's desktop, unopened. I'd grown bitter. What was the point of studying something I loved if nobody valued it? Then, in July, I got an unexpected email. Subject line, conversation request, scholarship application. The sender was Dr. Elise Morgan, the head of the Environmental Studies Scholarship Program at another institution. They'd received my thesis, archived in the university repository, and a candidate had cited it at length in their application for a prestigious graduate scholarship. Dr. Morgan was writing to confirm citation authenticity. My heart leapt. Someone had actually referenced my work, but as I read on, excitement curdled into confusion. Apparently, the applicant, a young man named Lucas Harding, had lifted entire paragraphs from my thesis, literature review, methodology descriptions, even direct excerpts of my statistical analysis, claiming them as his own. The scholarship committee discovered the duplication, when they ran the application text through plagiarism detection software, and they wanted to know if I gave permission for Lucas to use my work. I stared at the screen. Plagiarism? My plagiarism? How could someone do that? I reread the passages in question. They were word for word, my sentences about sampling protocols, my code snippets for calculating filtration efficiency, my concluding argument about policy implications. It was unmistakable. A flurry of emotions churned inside me: anger, disbelief, then a strange swell of vindication. Professor Hamid had said my degree was useless, that nobody cared about my work. Yet here was evidence that someone applying for a coveted scholarship found my ideas valuable enough to lift them wholesale. I felt a flicker of pride buried beneath the outrage. I emailed Dr. Morgan immediately. Dear Dr. Morgan, thank you for reaching out. I did not grant permission for my thesis content to be used in any external application. I'd be happy to discuss this further and provide proof of authorship. Sincerely, my name. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed with a video call request. The scholarship committee wanted my input. Did I consent? Would I consider endorsing Lucas? Was I amenable to legal action if necessary? I paced my living room, mind racing. On one hand, I could be the bigger person, grant retroactive permission in exchange for recognition, maybe even a co-authorship credit. On the other, I could pursue formal action, at minimum insist his application be revoked and demand an apology. I clicked accept on the call. Dr. Morgan's kindly face appeared. She introduced herself and explained protocols. We discovered the duplication 2 days ago. We've paused Lucas's application and reached out to him for explanation. However, we wanted to verify with you. We believe your original research is deserving of recognition, plagiarism aside. If you'd permit, we'd like to feature your thesis as the primary source in our scholarship literature. Her words made my head spin. Feature my thesis, as in, they'd invite me to present, or at least cite me prominently. It felt surreal. I cleared my throat. Dr. Morgan, I appreciate that, but I'm more concerned about the integrity of the process. If Lucas plagiarized, I want to see his application rejected. I want the scholarship awarded to someone who did original work, possibly someone else I know. She nodded gravely. Understood. We are convening the review panel tomorrow. We will remove Lucas from consideration. Would you like to be notified of the outcome? Yes, and thank you. And Dr. Morgan, if you would consider me for the scholarship, given that portions of it were built on my work, I'd be honored to apply, if that's possible. She blinked in surprise, then smiled. Of course, I'll send you details. I hung up, heart thudding. Months of self-doubt, of feeling worthless, seemed to lift for an instant. People I'd never met, needed my research, even if they tried to steal it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I drafted an email to Lucas, CCing Dr. Morgan, simple, firm, insisting he retract his submission and apologize. I didn't expect a reply, but I wanted the record straight. The next morning, I woke to 2 emails. One from Lucas, subject line reconversation request, brief and defensive. Dear my name, apologies if there's confusion. I obtained the thesis from the public repository and cited it, believing citation sufficed. I did not intend plagiarism. I'm withdrawing my application. Regards, Lucas Harding. And second, from Dr. Morgan. We have removed Lucas from the shortlist. We invite you to submit a full application for the scholarship by next Friday. Please find the guidelines attached. I stared at the screen, stomach lurching. Was this real? I reread the attachment. Eligibility criteria, award amount, application requirements, CV, research proposal, letters of recommendation. I had 1 week to prepare. My mind flashed back to Professor Hamid's words, useless. Now here was an opportunity to prove him wrong, to step into a spotlight I'd thought reserved for more marketable fields. I texted Mia. I'm applying for the scholarship. She replied immediately. Hell yes, I'll help with your proposal. I messaged my supervisor, Dr. Larson, who wrote back, I'd be delighted to support your application. Let's schedule a time to draft your proposal. Suddenly, I felt a rush of momentum, as though gravity had shifted and I was being pulled upward. My thesis, once a document gathering virtual dust, had become a catalyst for new beginnings. I imagined standing at the award ceremony in October, clutching that scholarship certificate, proving to Professor Hamid and to myself that my degree did have value. But even as excitement surged, doubt crept in. Could I compete against seasoned graduate students? Did I have the polish to craft a winning proposal? What if I failed again? I closed my laptop, exhaled, and reminded myself how far I'd come from that demoralizing defense to the brink of recognition. I decided to celebrate small victories. I changed out of my pajamas, brewed a strong latte, and headed to the local botanical garden, one of my thesis sites. As I wandered along the winding paths, the soft rustle of leaves and the chirp of birds grounded me. I pulled out my notebook and sketched out proposal ideas. A project expanding microplastic filtration research to coastal wetlands, exploring community-based citizen science, collaborating with local schools. My fingers moved across the page, ideas spilling out. By midday, I had an outline. The rest of the week would be a blur of writing, data analysis, and recommendation letters. But for the first time in months, I felt purposeful. The memory of Professor Hamid's mocking smile no longer weighed me down. It fueled me. That evening, I cooked a simple dinner and drafted the first pages of my proposal. Personal statement, research aims, methodology. I wrote about my passion for environmental stewardship, about how microplastics threatened not just ecosystems but human health. I cited my thesis, but this time framed it as a springboard for broader impact. I closed the document, saved it, and sat back in my chair. My apartment felt alive with possibilities. As I prepared for bed, I took a moment to reflect. The journey from that dismissive defense to here had been winding and bruising. I'd battled self-doubt, financial strain, and the gnawing fear of irrelevance. Yet here was proof that my work mattered, that even those who dismissed me could later scramble to borrow my words. It was ironic justice, yes, but also affirmation. I lay down with a sense of quiet determination. Part 1 of this story ended not in defeat, but in a pivot, a moment when mockery revealed the hidden value of my work, and plagiarism opened a door to opportunity. Tomorrow I'd dive into the proposal, armed with data, ambition, and the fierce resolve to prove that my degree was far from useless. And if I succeeded, well, that would be a story for part 2. When I clicked submit application on that scholarship portal, my finger trembled so badly that I almost canceled. In the weeks since Lucas's plagiarism was exposed, my life had flipped from frustration to a whirlwind of opportunity, reconciling with mentors, drafting proposals at dawn, and fielding congratulatory notes from friends and family. And yet, hitting submit on the very same application Lucas had corrupted felt like stepping into the ring a second time, only now I was fighting for myself. The morning after, I woke to a crisp email from Dr. Morgan. We have received your application and will be in touch within 4 weeks. A vague timeline, but enough to set my nerves jangling. I tried to dive into daily work, reprinting my thesis graphs with updated formatting, rehearsing a 10-minute presentation about microplastic mitigation, and volunteering at the local river cleanup to bolster my community engagement section. Yet every ping of my inbox sent me scrambling to look for scholarship updates. Week 1 passed in a blur of lab work and late-night writing. I revised my proposal's methodology 3 times, tweaked my budget spreadsheet for accuracy down to the last cent, and sought feedback from Dr. Larson and Dr. Vega. They read my drafts, marking up passages with gold star stickers and notes like compelling narrative and great rationale for funding. Their excitement buoyed me. Someone validated the hours I'd poured into my ideas. In week 2, I faced the most daunting task, assembling letters of recommendation. I tapped 2 colleagues from my cafe job, both managers who'd seen me juggle demanding shifts and my environmental consulting internship, and asked if they could speak to my dedication, adaptability, and analytical thinking. One sent back a glowing email within hours. The other scheduled a chat to flesh out anecdotes about how I'd streamlined inventory tracking with a simple spreadsheet macro. Behind those letters was a mosaic of skills I sometimes overlooked: customer service, project management, grassroots leadership, and an ability to learn on the fly. By the end of week 3, my application packet was a thick PDF dossier, neatly bookmarked, hyperlinked, and balanced between technical detail and personal reflection. I double-checked every citation, uploaded high-resolution document scans, and hit submit with a confidence that felt half real, half plucked from a pep talk by Mia. You're worthy. The portal confirmed receipt, application status, under review. From that moment, life became an exercise in patience. I kept busy, devising a pilot microplastic filtration unit in my kitchen sink, an offhand project I pitched at the cafe's Innovation Day, attending a weekend workshop on grassroots environmental advocacy, and shadowing a policy analyst at the State Department of Water Resources. Each activity broadened my perspective and deepened my application's foundation, but also served as a distraction from the nagging question, what if I don't get it? Finally, 4 weeks later, my phone lit up with an email from Dr. Morgan. Congratulations, we are delighted to offer you the Environmental Leadership Scholarship. I stared at the screen, speechless. My heart thundered so loud I could almost hear it in my desk lamp's hum. Numbly, I read the rest: coverage of tuition, a modest living stipend, and an invitation to present my research at the annual Environmental Futures Symposium. I dropped my pen. The coffee-stained notepad fluttered to the floor. Mia, who'd been on my group chat, erupted in excited texts. You did it, pop the champagne. What's your excitement level on a scale of 1 to 10? My reply, 11, eternal gratitude. The next few days were a whirl of congratulatory calls, official paperwork, and buzzing excitement. My parents insisted on a celebratory dinner. Dad bragged to his colleagues, and my sister FaceTimed with confetti filters. In our living room, I sat in a circle of family and friends, scholarship letter in hand, and talked through my next steps, coordinating with the scholarship office, planning my presentation, and lining up lodging for the symposium. That presentation became my first test of true confidence. I practiced in front of a mirror, recorded myself delivering dry-run slides, and solicited feedback from every corner. Mia critiqued my pacing. Dr. Vega suggested more vivid anecdotes. Even my cafe coworker reminded me to enunciate my consonants. When the big day arrived, I stepped onto the symposium stage, lights glaring, the audience a sea of strangers in polished business attire. My palms were clammy, my throat tight. I took a breath and began, "Good morning. I'm Naim, recent graduate in environmental science, and today I'll show you how we can deploy low-cost microplastic filters in community water systems." For 10 minutes, I guided listeners through my study's origins, collecting samples at dawn in the river's silt, the moment I discovered microplastic hotspots near storm drains, the statistical breakthrough that linked urban runoff to spike concentrations downstream. I spoke of my vision, partnering with local schools for citizen science testing, integrating filter pods into municipal treatment, and empowering communities to track plastic pollution in real time. When I concluded, the room erupted in applause. Heartfelt, reverent applause I'd never experienced. Hands shot up with questions about funding models, alternative filter materials, policy frameworks. I answered each, buoyed by a surge of certainty I hadn't known I possessed. On my way out, Dr. Morgan greeted me with a hug and whispered, "You've set a high bar. We're proud you're part of this scholarship cohort." Over the coming months, life settled into a productive rhythm. I balanced coursework, fieldwork, and community outreach, my scholarship stipend lifting financial anxiety. I mentored 2 undergraduate interns, teaching them sample collection protocols and data entry techniques. Each Wednesday, I led a meeting for the local River Guardians group, sharing insights from my research and rallying volunteers. My thesis, once gathering digital dust, became a living document, regularly updated, cited in policy briefs, and featured in a peer-reviewed journal article I co-authored with Dr. Larson. Perhaps the sweetest vindication came when Professor Hamid, the one who once scoffed at my degree, appeared on the symposium program, unexpectedly scheduled as a panelist on bridging academic research and private sector solutions. I watched his pre-panel talk from the second row, curious to see if he'd mention microplastics. When I introduced myself afterward, he recognized me with a quick nod and said, "Your presentation was robust." He paused, adjusting his glasses. "Perhaps I underestimated the real-world applicability of your work." I felt a quiet thrill. Without rancor, I smiled. "Thank you. I'm glad the scholarship gave me the opportunity to prove it." He offered an almost awkward handshake. "If you ever need a letter of recommendation for private sector roles, let me know." That offer, nothing short of sweet justice, drove home how far I'd come. The man who told me my degree was useless was now offering to champion me for exactly the kind of roles he'd claimed were closed to me. In the final semester of my graduate coursework, I fielded internship offers from a sustainability consultancy firm, a clean water startup, and a regional environmental NGO. When I weighed the options, I realized I didn't have to choose between academic purity and private sector pragmatism. Thanks to the scholarship, I'd built a unique profile, rigorous research skills, community outreach experience, and a proven track record of translating data into policy recommendations. I accepted the consultancy offer, drawn by the chance to pilot my filter designs at scale. On my first day at Greenbridge Consulting, I wore a simple pinned-on button, "Microplastics Matter." My new boss, a former EPA scientist, greeted me with a sly grin. "I read your paper. Impressive work." I exhaled, relief blossoming into excitement. The journey from that mortifying thesis defense to this moment had been winding and bruising, but it had led me to a place where my degree was celebrated, not derided. I'd turned mockery into motivation, plagiarism into opportunity, and self-doubt into drive. That evening, I returned to the campus where it all began. The river glinted gold in the sunset, with the city skyline faint in the distance. I sat on the familiar bench and opened my notebook, pen poised. I jotted the evening's thoughts, new project ideas, plans for graduate seminars, a vision for a nonprofit to fund grassroots microplastic monitoring. Above me, magnolia petals drifted in the breeze, and I realized my journey wasn't defined by one professor's doubt or one plagiarist's theft. It was an ongoing story I authored every day. As the sky deepened to indigo, I whispered to the river's steady flow, "Thank you for carrying me from useless to unbound." Then I packed up my notebook, rose and walked away, ready for the chapters yet unwritten.